All right, I think third time's the charm. Third time's the charm, guys. Peace, Rebecca. I think this time it'll work. I have uh, I have it uploaded.
Hello, friends and family, brothers and sisters on YouTube world. It says that we are live. We're back with Larry Johnson, former CIA and also counterterrorism for the State Department. Thank you, Larry, for coming back. We thank you for your time and your knowledge. Go ahead, Bach. We're also met with Bach Precision, and an old YouTube friend. Go check out his content. Go ahead, Bach.
Hi, Larry. My first question for you is, what do you think the Arab regimes neighboring Israel, what do you think their response to the Houthis and their blockade of the Red Sea is going to be? Because the acts of the Houthis made them look really bad to the Arab public. I'm talking about countries like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. What do you think their response will be, seeing that the Houthis and Hamas itself have basically done a lot of damage to the Israeli brand?
Well, are you saying that the Arab public was against what the Houthis have done?
No, they actually are supportive.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I misunderstood.
And impressed.
Yeah, no, it puts, if anything, it puts additional pressure on countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, to do something, because Yemen's proving to be very, very effective in shutting down maritime traffic to Israeli ports to and from. They have essentially closed the Red Sea, which is remarkable. And, the United States can't figure out what to do. So we sent this Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group into the Red Sea to sail around and flex muscles. But the United States now is sort of like that, the 60-year-old guy with a big beer gut that's out at the beach trying to flex his muscles to impress the women, not being very impressive. They're just all they're seeing is the fat belly, and that's sort of what the rest of the world is seeing, because if you notice, there have been no airstrikes against targets in Yemen, including no cruise missile strikes, which clearly the United States has the capability of doing. And my understanding from what I've heard is that the military planners at the Pentagon have been very worried that if they started getting too aggressive, that the Houthis have in their arsenal anti-ship missiles and could conceivably sink the aircraft carrier, because the destroyers that are accompanying that aircraft carrier have very limited power. They can fire off, let's say, 100 missiles, air defense missiles, but once they're out, they're out. There's not they don't just have another ship sell up and offload some new ammunition. They literally have to go to a port somewhere where there is a stockpile or storehouse of those missiles. So we got news yesterday that the Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group is being withdrawn from the Red Sea and heading home. So that means they're going back to refit. Again, it just underscores the limit that these aircraft carriers look big and they look powerful, but really they've got limited capability, very limited capability, and really have no ability to sustain themselves in a prolonged conflict. So, the Houthis, little bit of Yemen is acting, pretty big.
So, Larry, you're saying that basically the Houthis made the Americans flinch. They called their bluff, and
yeah, well, at least that's how it's going to be viewed by many in the Arab world. The United States would disagree and say, "Oh, no, that's not the case. The ships had been at sea past their expiration date, and they needed to come home to refit. But they're sending a marine amphibious landing ship, which you got to scratch your head and wonder what the hell are they doing that for, because they certainly don't have the backup to land Marines in Yemen. If they did that, it'd be a suicide mission. And those amphibious ships, they're not known for having air defense systems that can take out missiles and drones. So it's a very, very curious move on the part of the U.S.
Okay. My other question is, do you think there will ever be a coalition like back in the early 2000s that will be headed by the U.S. in like a military conflict
Yeah.
in the region?
No, you saw they tried to pull together a coalition of the willing, and initially they said, "Oh man, we got 20 countries. We got France and Italy and Spain and Australia." And then they look around and go, "Whoops!" All those countries said, "No, never mind. We're not going to be part of this." They could see it was just, it was going to be the proverbial shit show. And the UK they send one ship, and the one ship they sent has, let's call it a history of not being reliable. Tough, they can't keep it repaired, can't keep it out in the water. So, I mean, it's just, it's a clown show when you look at this.
Do you have any questions, Real Truth Talk?
Yes, sir. Okay. I was going to ask you, what impact or significant will the deployment of a Iranian warship to the Red Sea amid soaring tensions have?
Yeah, just it creates one more can of open gasoline near a flaming fire. This is it raises the possibility that at some point the U.S. would engage that Iranian ship. It's a show of force by Iran, sort of tweaking the nose of the United States and its so-called coalition of the unwilling, that it can sail into the Red Sea, and it's there as, I think, a sign of support for the Houthis, because Iran has backed the Houthis in their war against Saudi Arabia up until recently. So this just there is a long-standing relationship there between Iran and the rebels in Yemen. And so this is it's a pretty bold move by Iran. I'll put it that way.
I have a question about the other side of the Red Sea, the African coast.
Mm-hmm.
Ethiopia recently just signed a memorandum of understanding to control one of the one of the ports in Somaliland, the breakaway Republic of Somaliland. Do you think that has anything to do with the Houthis and the Red Sea blockades?
Frankly, I don't know. I haven't really studied. I've stayed away from Somalia. Centuries of conflict and back and forth. The analysis I have seen just shows that whatever influence the United States was able to exercise in that region in the past is weakening with each passing day. So, this will set up a confrontation between Ethiopia and Somalia and the Somaliland rebels. And so, it's a recipe for, the expanding a war in the region that's already in upheaval. So this, this is not you don't see this as good news that this is going to bring stability to the region. It's likely going to increase instability.
Okay, my next question is, I thought you had a follow up.
Oh, no.
You said that the Israeli army is weak. Can you please elaborate?
Well, they're poorly trained is my main point, and poor training makes you weak. They've had several incidents where the one couple of weeks back where these 3 Israeli hostages managed to escape from Hamas, and there was an Israeli unit that was it comprised largely of new reservists. We subsequently learned, and so they come out with take their shirts off to show that they don't have any bombs strapped to their body, and they're waving a white flag, and one of the Israeli soldiers began shooting, and then others began shooting, and at least 2 Israelis, even after they were given an order by the commander to cease fire, they kept firing. Now, this highlights a number of things. Number one, it shows that Israel has rules of engagement that allow them to shoot unarmed people, that they're almost encouraged to shoot unarmed people. So right there you have a problem. That means they're a bunch of damn cowards. Then number two, the after-action report that was published in the Israeli newspapers, it was just shocking in terms of that orders were issued and not obeyed. And the soldiers who didn't obey the order said, well, we didn't think it was permanent. We thought it was just a suggestion or, One of the reasons soldiers go through basic training for an extended period of time, for up to 3 months, is to learn how to obey orders and learn the consequences of what happens to you if you don't obey orders. That's part of building discipline. These guys, the Israeli army is just completely undisciplined. Then the rank structure, they're listing guys who are 21 years old as staff sergeants. Now, a staff sergeant is a non-commissioned officer, usually is put in charge of, a platoon, if not a larger group, will basically oversees the work of other sergeants. In the U.S. military, a staff sergeant is between 28 and 30 years old. And that means you've been in the Army for 8 years, 10 years, you've got some experience, you know what you're doing. Israel doesn't have that. They're making some 21-year-old kid a staff sergeant. I bet he can barely put his pants on straight. And so what you wind up with is just this army. It's got all the talent. It's got all the terms, the titles. They dress up in the right ninja gear, but they don't know what they're doing. And we're seeing that right now where Israel's having to withdraw several brigades. They're saying it's because of economic reasons, and I'm sure that's part of it. They've lost because it's a reserve. The Israeli army, so-called defense force, I call it the Israeli occupation force, is largely a reserve force, which means it's people, they'll go in, they'll serve an initial period of time, maybe 1 year, 2 years max. Then they get out and they have weekend duty, maybe once a month, maybe twice a month, maybe an extended week, 2-week training interspersed here and there. But really, they don't have a professional military across the board. So these reservists who are working as, they're running McDonald's and a shawarma stand and a shoe store and an auto repair, they get called into active duty. Their business is closed or is understaffed or not properly managed. And so that's having a definite economic impact in Israel. But on top of that, the Israelis have taken significant casualties. The death toll is not so great as it is the number that have been wounded in action. Significant. Some are going to be paralyzed for life, have lost limbs. So it's really taking a toll in that regard. And they've lost a lot of vehicles because their strategy of and I predicted this along with several others like Scott Ritter and Doug McGregor, the Israeli strategy of bombing the Gazans into the Stone Age, it was counterproductive. It's exactly what the Germans did to Stalingrad. They thought, we'll destroy the city. That'll root those Russians out. It had just the exact opposite effect. What it did, it created natural cover and concealment. The difference between cover and concealment: cover means you get behind something and they try to shoot at you, the bullet's not going to come through. Concealment means you're just hidden so nobody can see you, but if they did shoot at you, the bullet would probably penetrate. Oh. So these Hamas fighters and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad as well, and then there's some other groups, are skulking about in these ruins, popping up and blasting tanks and armored personnel carriers, and that's creating injuries. It may not always kill people, but it wounds a lot. So Israel's pulling out. They said that they were there to destroy Hamas. Well, they haven't destroyed Hamas. The Israelis did carry out an assassination today in Beirut, where they killed the deputy leader of Hamas. And this is going to, I think, really escalate activity in the region. This is, I think, likely to lead to Hezbollah now becoming more active. And what that means for the Israeli occupation force is they don't have the manpower and the staying power to sustain this war. And Netanyahu said, this is going to go on for a long time. Well, they don't have a long time. The Israeli economy can't withstand it. And when you look at what the Houthis have done in shutting down maritime traffic in the Red Sea for going to and from Israel, that's another blow to the economy of Israel. So it's the Israelis are in a tough position right now, particularly Netanyahu. So he's facing growing dissension within his war cabinet. Just the other, I guess it was last Thursday or Friday, he wanted to have a press conference. He wanted to do it with Gallant, the defense minister, and Danny Gantz, who is the opposition political leader, but agreed to come into the war cabinet and to show unity on the part of Israel. Well, Gallant and Gantz told him to go blow it up his ass. They weren't going to show up with him. So, Netanyahu ended up canceling the press conference. So when you've got guys like Gallant and Gantz starting to push back publicly in that way against Netanyahu, it's not a good look. This is when you're in a fight, what they say is a fight for their lives. That's kind of disunity doesn't add to your combat effectiveness.
Also, it's true that Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have infinitely more tunnels, infinitely more rocket power, missile power than Hamas. Mm-hmm. So whatever damage Hamas has done to the IDF forces, the occupation forces, Hezbollah will do way more, infinitely more.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've already emptied out the kibbutzim and settlements that were along the northern border with Lebanon and Syria. They're empty. So about 100,000 Israeli civilians are now living elsewhere, trying to find alternative housing. They had to leave their homes because of fear of getting hit with mortars, artillery shells, drones, missiles by Hezbollah. And Hezbollah, as you correctly note, is a far more substantial military force and far more capable military force than Hamas. So, and I'm just completely mystified why there are so many of these right-wing crazies in Israel that are calling for getting involved, going to battle with Hezbollah. I think it'll be a walk in the park. They didn't learn their lesson in 2006. They got beaten. And Hezbollah, I would argue today, is far stronger, far more capable than the force that the Israelis fought against in 2006.
Is this the first time in Israeli history that they actually have displaced Israeli refugees, internal refugees in Israel? Israelis leaving their homes to
Well, in this number,
this number, yeah.
this number, the fact that you've the vacated the communities in the Gaza and up north, this is sort of one of the largest. And let's also note that this is probably the most protracted conflict that Israel has been engaged in. At least it's approaching, I guess, the 1982 invasion of Lebanon, 81. I don't recall the precise date. That may have been longer, but this one is far more costly. I think this is turning out to be the most costly military response by Israel. And it's so unnecessary. Israel had other alternatives. They won the initial phase of the propaganda war on October 7th by pushing the lie that Hamas was raping women and beheading children and baking children in ovens. I mean, it was just all damnable lies, but Israel sold it really well. It was widely believed around the world. So at that point, Israel's option would have been to go on the diplomatic route, to enlist Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, saying, look, we don't want to go in and hurt the Palestinians, but we want to punish Hamas. Yeah. They would have had some support. Both the Egyptians and Saudis were not any fans of Hamas by any stretch. So Israel had a choice, but that wasn't what Israel wanted to do. Israel wants to eliminate the Palestinians. It's pure genocide. They want to do to the Palestinians what the Nazis wanted to do to the Jews in World War II in Europe. They want to erase them. And they have no regard for their life or welfare. That's why they're indiscriminately killing women, children, of course, men. And, Israel has never learned the lesson. You can't kill your way out of this situation. And it's like this assassination today of this number 2 guy in Hamas. You know how many times they've assassinated Hamas leaders? I mean, good Lord, they assassinated the founder of Hamas years ago, Sheikh Yassin. Yeah. Did that change anything? No. So it's the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. And so Israel thinks it can kill its way out of this, and it can't. It's got to deal with the politics of it. And their actions against the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank over the last now approaching 3 months has turned world opinion against Israel in a way I've never seen in my lifetime.
Same. Yeah.
I mean, candidly, I had been a supporter of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., the National Museum. I've been a supporting member since 1993. I've canceled my membership because that museum wants to speak out only about Jewish Holocaust, while the Jews in Israel are causing a new Holocaust. We have to have one standard, in my view, and this just wanton murder of women and children, I think, is outrageous.
I have a question on the effect on the Israeli economy. This conflict is doing a lot of damage to their economy, more than any other conflict with any Arab nation before.
Well, no. I mean, this is unprecedented, I guess is the best way to put it. Israel has not had to activate and deploy this many reservists, coupled with the cutoff of maritime traffic from the south, coupled with it's engaged in a war with Hezbollah undeclared. And I think what we're going to see is Hezbollah's activities in the wake of this assassination of Hamas number 2. Hezbollah's activity is going to increase. Sheikh Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, was scheduled to speak tomorrow. He has now canceled that speech. I don't take this as a good sign. This, they're obviously sort of recalibrating what they're going to do, what their next steps forward are. So, we're starting off the new year with prospects of this war widening and getting worse, not better.
Larry, you said that the second in command of Hamas was killed or assassinated.
Yeah.
Was that one of the brothers, Sinar? I believe their name is Sinar or
no, Sinwar. No, this is Al-Aruri, Arouri, is I think how he spells his name.
Okay, and then my wife wants to know, what are your thoughts on that will impact the U.S. upcoming elections? I have to get her question in there.
Yeah, no, of course. Biden is desperate for a win, and he's not getting a win. The war, Israel's war against the Palestinians, is driving a big wedge in the Democratic Party. In the past, you had the Palestinians supporting the Democrats. They certainly weren't going to align themselves with the Republicans, but now that's up in the air. They're reevaluating their support for the Democrats. But frankly, I don't know where else to go, because it's not like, the Republicans are more unified in supporting Israel at any cost, at any price. So it's not like if you support the Republicans, you're going to get a better outcome with respect to Israel. But it still leaves Joe Biden as being perceived as weak. I mean, the withdrawal of the carrier strike group this week is just going to be used as one other example of Biden's weakness and indecisiveness. And then you couple that with the loss of Ukraine and the inability to sustain that war. The fact that Russia is prevailing is going to be sticking in his craw. And then I think it's highly unlikely that China is going to make any military move against Taiwan, but China is certainly going to make political moves and may well find itself through political negotiations to secure Taiwan back as a full-fledged member of China. So this is. I think this, basically it plays into the hands of Donald Trump on the Republican side, because he is consistently the most anti-war candidate out there, and has always been reluctant to get the United States engaged in these foreign conflicts. And I think, frankly, the majority of American people are sick and tired of sending their sons and daughters overseas to get maimed or possibly killed. For what? We wasted 20 years in Afghanistan for what? So the Taliban would have more U.S. guns and armaments? Ditto in Iraq. We invade Iraq to take out Saddam Hussein, and now we wind up having, we say that we view Iran as the greatest threat. Well, we've now created another great ally for Iran. So our foreign policy just doesn't make sense. And then, the prospects of having to go to war with Russia, which some people are talking about, is just that's talk of crazy people. Because if the United States does that, the United States will lose, and will lose badly. And maybe that's what it's going to take for the United States to come to its senses. I don't know.
It was interesting, an observation that Putin did not invade Ukraine while Trump was in office. He waited to do that after Trump left office. And also the invasion of Crimea was when Obama was in office in 2014. So it's almost like the Russians always wait when the Democrats are in power to do their offensive acts. But they don't do anything when Trump was in office.
Well, let's remember that when Russia did not invade Georgia, it was Georgia that attacked Russia and then the Russians responded. So that particular military action was provoked. Similarly, with what happened in Ukraine, with the Biden administration, they came in with a decided change in policy that they were going to ramp up the confrontation with Russia, and they were going to do it through a combination of expanding NATO, and then trying to, I think they deliberately provoked Putin into launching the special military operation, because the West calculated that they could break the Russian economy and break and destroy Putin. Turned out, boy, that was a miscalculation of enormous consequences. They couldn't do it. So this is, if you had Nikki Haley in there, she would be as bad as Obama or Biden, perhaps worse. There are not too many candidates out there that are consistently anti-war, because the reality of the U.S. economy is it's heavily invested in the military-industrial complex, and the defense contractors continue to reap great profits. They may make crappy equipment that doesn't perform well in combat, but they do get a good return for their shareholders. So the United States is always on the move to look for a new threat that we can justify. Our defense budget, I think the amount appropriated right now is $880 billion, but I think in real dollars, I've heard amounts. Jeffrey Sachs cited, I think, like $1.3 trillion. This is insane. We're just spending all of U.S. resources overseas, and while our own country is just going to literally hell in terms of rising suicides, people dying from drug overdoses, the country flooded with illegal immigrants, crime increasing. So it's just the United States is pretty shabby as a country right now.
Yeah, it's on a massive decline.
I just want to real quick say, Larry, I want to encourage everybody to go to the son of the New American Revolution, the Sonar. He has a good article that he wrote. He's answering all the questions that we're asking are on that article. I was checking that out. It's called "Are Israel and the U.S. Caught in a Grimier?" And then at the end of the article, it's a cool little video.
This Palestinian comedian,
yes.
Very funny guy.
Yes. So I want to encourage everybody to go there, and then that will lead me to my next question. I have a question, changing a little bit. Putin has sent a strong message to Israel, condemning Israel action during the war, warning Israel to stop its aggression and respect international law, or to expect consequences. How serious is Russia's message, and what has Israel been doing that could have involved Russia to give such a warning? And what does this mean for the future of the Middle East?
Yeah, so first, the address for my website is sonar21.com. So don't forget the 21.
Oh yeah, it'll be in the description box.
Oh, okay, cool. What we're witnessing is the loss of U.S. prestige in the Middle East. Up until, even during Trump's time, the United States was seen as the primary broker. If anything was going to get done in terms of peace negotiations, U.S. was going to have a seat at the table and would play a dominant role. That's part of the reason the Abraham Accords, which were negotiated, I guess, by Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, looked like it was going to move the relations between the Saudis and Israelis in a new and more positive direction. Would have actually provided Israel with a measure of stability and security that it has not had over the last 70 years. But the combination of the Israeli response to the Hamas attack on October 7th, but even before that, what the United States did in Ukraine and in backing Ukraine and in trying to destroy Russia emboldened Russia, sort of like it woke Russia from a dream, from a sleep. And they suddenly realized that, you know what, we don't need the West. We don't need the United States. We're strong enough on our own. And on top of that, the West is trying to destroy us. So we got to defend ourselves. So in the process of defending themselves, they expanded their ties with China in a new and dramatic way. Let's remember that for roughly 50 years, one of the cornerstones of American foreign policy was to keep a wedge between China and Russia. The last thing we wanted to see was a unity of China and Russia working together. Well, boom. Congratulations, Joe Biden. You've managed to undo 50 years of U.S. foreign policy in 1 year. So the new alliance between Russia and China is now played out. It had ramifications in the Middle East. China in particular, but with Russia's encouragement and support, brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia that effectively brought an end to the civil war in Yemen. It restored relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which had been, non-existent in terms of diplomatic relations. It then also, with Russia, it led to readmitting Syria to the Arab League. Prior to 2022, most of the Arab world was still involved, tacitly supporting Islamic extremists that were attacking the government of Syria. They're trying to destroy Bashar al-Assad. That's over now. Bashar al-Assad is back in the good graces of the Arab League, of the Organization of Islamic Countries. So, again, that was another cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy, trying to, show it could punish and eliminate countries that, it viewed as enemies or uncooperative. So, on those, two issues right there, the war in Yemen, the war in Syria, the United States lost out. And you've seen it reflected when, Anthony Blinken was over there trying to negotiate some sort of end to the conflict in Israel and Gaza. When he landed in Turkey, the normal protocol would be to send out the foreign minister or someone who was a high-ranking government official to welcome him to the country. They sent out some guy who was, the deputy mayor of a local town. I mean, it was one of those ways to show that we don't think anything of you.
You think that was deliberate?
Huh? Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was deliberate. Yeah.
And then remember when Blinken showed up, he said, we're supposed to have a meeting Saturday night at like 7 p.m. with Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. Yeah. Oh, so he shows up. It kept him cooling his heels all night. Oh, yeah, well, it will be with you in a bit. 12 hours later, okay, we'll see you. Again, they're just deliberately screwing with him. So what all this means is that the United States is no longer in a strong position. Russia is. And, Russia is preferring to work through the United Nations, through the UN Security Council, and following international law. And people say, wow, how could he do that when he's violating international law in Ukraine? Well, no, he's not. That Russia had been attacked, and the Ukrainians were actually on the verge in February of 2022 of launching their own offensive to try to finish up destroying the militias in Donetsk and Luhansk. And Russia preempted that with a special military operation. So I think there's growing respect for Russia among a lot of countries. And Russia, as of yesterday, is now the chair for 1 year of BRICS. And the membership of BRICS has expanded to include Iran and Saudi Arabia. And I think the United Arab Emirates as well. So what you're getting is the growing number of the Arab Gulf states are aligning themselves more closely with Russia and China than with the United States.
So I was kind of wondering about that this morning. So Iran Iran is not, or they are part of the BRICS.
They're part of BRICS now.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. My next question, Larry, is this morning I was reading in Dr. Falk. It's Benjamin Netanyahu's advisor says that the IDF will be successful when Hamas is gone. He also said that Israel has to be de-radicalize and demilitarize the Palestinians. What are your thoughts on that happening?
Yeah, pigs are going to fly before that happens. They'll sprout wings and fly around the U.S. Capitol. That's, I said, Israel, they can't kill their way out of this. They think they can. They're trying. And all they're doing is creating new generations of fighters. The countries that operate under this belief, this fantasy, that if we can assassinate a key leader, assassinate a key military person, that, boy, that'll turn the war in our favor, just proven, throughout history to generally not be true. I know the French tried it in Algeria, when they were fighting the armed Islamic group, again, radical, they were described as radical Muslims, but who were hell-bent on getting rid of French influence in Algeria. The French killed off a lot of the top leadership. But what that did is it eliminated the guys who actually were putting the brakes on they had some younger, hotter heads that were advocating more extreme action. And it was the senior leadership that put the brakes on that. Well, once those senior leaders were dead, guess what? The younger guys took over and the war got more violent, not less violent. And France ultimately lost that war. We saw the same thing with the drug cartels. One of my now retired business partners was the architect of the U.S. Kingpin strategy. And the idea was to go out and arrest, take down, not kill, but at least take out the heads of Pablo Escobar, the Cali cartel, the Sinaloa cartel. But what happens is when you eliminate that top echelon of leadership, it's more like hitting a ball of mercury with a hammer. Instead of destroying the mercury, it just scatters it and they reconstitute, and it becomes more difficult to control. So that's what Israel's facing now, is they think that they can just kill. What are they going to do? Murder 2 million women, children, and Palestinian men? Make it 1/3 of what the Jews claim they lost during the Holocaust? That's not going to be tolerated in the world, no matter how indifferent people appear right now. What I think is Israel's actions right now are threatening the very future of Israel as a state. It's eroding support for it tremendously around the world. But we still haven't reached that breaking point. Erdogan of Turkey talks a tough game, but he hasn't followed it up with tough action, such as cutting off oil. If he decides to cut off the flow of oil to Israel, then Israel's got some real economic problems on its hands. Maybe he'll do that. I don't know. But as long as the United States continues let's think of Israel as a degenerate junkie hooked on heroin, and the United States is the pusher. We're the supplier. As long as we continue to provide Israel with money and weapons, they're going to keep doing the self-destructive stuff. The United States is the only country that's actually in a position to stop Israel and stop it cold. But we won't do it because politically it's not palatable in the United States. So the United States is basically committing itself to a policy that is eroding U.S. influence and prestige around the world as well.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, let me see. I asked you everything I wanted to regarding the Israel-Hamas.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any more questions, Juan.
Okay. I have questions. Larry, can you please talk about the Hamas underground tunnels and what Israel has done to neutralize the threat of the tunnels? I seen an article this morning, and I was amazed at how big they were, the tunnels, and how sophisticated they were.
Yeah, well, Israel has been unable to solve the tunnel problem. That's the bottom line. They've captured some. The idea was that some have said, "Oh, we'll just pump seawater into it and it'll fill up," thinking that this tunnel system was all one integrated system. It's not. It's apparently, multiple systems scattered throughout Gaza Strip. I mean, that's a big, expansive territory. What's remarkable, though, is that Hamas was able to construct this over the last 15 years, or at least last 12 years. I mean, it's an enormous and complex. So, Israel can't fight their way out of this. They can destroy some, they can eliminate some tunnels, but the others exist. They still haven't found the hostages. Still at least 120, 130 hostages being held. And it is the problem Israel faces when they get up to any of these entrances to the tunnels is that they get ambushed and they take casualties. I think that's one of the reasons that they're pulling some brigades out that have been in combat now for going on 3 months, and now they're going to be this sort of the ironic thing. They're going to be replaced with some new guys who don't have experience, who are going to go out and make the mistakes and get more of them killed and wounded, so that the Israelis will have to pull them out in another 2 or 3 months. Yeah, it's an untenable military strategy. Israel doesn't have a large enough army to destroy the Gaza Strip, and moreover, it can't afford the political consequences of killing all the Palestinians, which is what it would have to do. So it's just, this thing is not going to get resolved in a way that's going to be favorable to Israel.
Yeah, I also read somewhere that they were using the rubbish or the destruction, the rubbish, and they were hiding behind, inside the rubbish, and attacking also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the problem with, when you create all this rubble, destroy all these buildings, you create obstacles that tanks will have trouble driving over. And then when you have to go to try to clear a path, you realize there's just certain defined lanes of travel. So it's easy to set up ambushes at those points. That's one of, you'd think people would have learned that as a lesson of urban combat, but clearly the Israelis didn't.
We also have a question in the comment section. It says, can Saudi Arabia reject a request of any kind against the USA, as America is responsible for their security and a key operator of the Saudi oil industry?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Saudis are distancing themselves from the United States every day. That's why they're growing alliance with both China and Russia. So, I think the U.S. security for their oil industry is grossly exaggerated. They get more security by having a peaceful arrangement with Iran. Iran is who they really feared, and bringing an end to the war with their support for the government of Yemen and the war against the Houthis. Previously the Houthis were, with some regularity attacking Saudi oil fields. And so it was, the Saudis put in Patriot missile batteries that didn't work. It couldn't shoot down some of the Houthi missiles. So, I think what we're seeing is Saudis, by virtue of joining BRICS, are now moving into a new world order that is not controlled or dominated by the United States as it once was.
Follow-up question: do you think BRICS is going to replace the G7, G20 group of nations as like the predominant economic bloc?
Well, I think it's going to become. I think it's well on its way to becoming the dominant economic bloc because it has the most industrial capability. When you consider the industrial capability of China, Russia, India, and Brazil, there's no alliance in the West that can even match it. The United States and Europe are right now are hard pressed. They can't even factories in the United States and Europe can't even produce enough artillery shells to keep up with the demand from Ukraine, whereas Russia outproduces both the United States and the Europeans on just that account alone. But it's the same across the board. So what we're seeing is this emergence as a new world order. It's going to make the G7 less and less relevant.
Larry, I was going to ask you, is Kim Jong recent and explicit statement ordering his military leaders to prepare plan of a nuclear attack on South Korea paired with North Korea actual ICBM capability, proper reconnaissance capability, and nuclear capability cause for concern even more so than before due to the expansion of the U.S. South Korea military drills? Is the U.S. provoking North Korea, and why the strong words against coming from the president of North Korea at this time?
Yeah, I don't know what moved him off. He's been watching, let's call it U.S. aggression in the region, and just sending it. I think it was his way to speak out and say, "Hey, I'm still here. I'm still relevant." I don't think he's going to launch any nukes at South Korea simply because it would endanger North Korea and probably end the life of the North Korean people, along with the South Koreans. But he is showing that he's a player. What's interesting is the relationship now between North Korea and Russia is stronger. That's improving. And we'll find that Putin may actually be in a position to help restrain or rein in the North Koreans. So, but clearly the efforts of South Korea and Japan to strengthen their military alliance with the United States has, I think, been a factor in provoking this response by North Korea.
And then, if you don't have any more questions, Bach, I just have one more.
I think no, I've exhausted all my questions. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
I have one more question, Larry. Could you give us just like a detail or just like a short, what do you think about Putin's speech that he gave on New Year's?
Well, I haven't read that. I read his remarks. He went to the military hospital to visit the veterans that had been wounded. Pretty remarkable speech. People ought to read that. The thing to remember about Putin is he means what he says. He's not Mr. Nuance. He's not sending secret messages wrapped in some sort of obscure language. He's very direct. And he recognizes very clearly that Russia is in a war of survival against the West. They're not fighting Ukraine. They're fighting the United States and NATO. And he's very clear about that. In fact, he went to some lengths to say that he does not view Ukraine, the Ukrainian people, as the enemy. They're not. It's the West that's the enemy. And so he's speaking about that now in a way that he never really has before. And that his view is reflected in remarks by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and former President Medvedev, that the Russians are awake and realize that there's not a negotiated outcome here, or one where you cut a deal, and that they make some concessions and the West makes some concessions and everybody comes to a happy ending. That's not going to happen. They're going to destroy Ukraine's military capability. And in the process of that, they are doing a destruction of NATO's capabilities, because it's really NATO's using Ukraine as a proxy army in this fight. And so by destroying the Ukrainian military, you're actually indirectly destroying NATO. And it's going to force NATO to have to do a real reappraisal. You know, there's some that are, again, talking very with a lot of bellicosity. Oh boy, we need to get ready to go to war with Russia. You know, that's what this crazy general out of the Netherlands said. Well, good luck with that, sport. You don't have a damn army worth anything, and your air force is weak. What are you going to fight with? You know, same for the Brits. They could barely field 30,000 guys. You know, Russia, let's put it this way. The entire British army that they could put in the field right now is about half the size of what Russia is recruiting every month. So Russia's bringing in, you know, over 41,000 soldiers a month, and the Brits have a total of 30,000 that they think they can put in the field. Again, these people, they're challenged with math. They can't even do basic addition and subtraction, for God's sake. The other thing that Putin said to the wounded soldiers was, I'm not, you know, we've been attacked with a terrorist attack by Ukrainian bombing civilians in Belgorod and Donetsk. You know, using these cluster munitions that the United States pledged would not be used against civilians, but it's absolutely being used against civilian targets that have no military significance. Ukraine tries to make the case, oh, well, Russia's doing the same. Oh, really? So, like, Russia bombed a hotel in Kharkiv the other day that was known to be a headquarters for Western militants that are supporting the Ukrainians, as well as some other Ukrainian military and security personnel. Well, Ukraine came out and said, oh, you hit a civilian target. Okay, give us the list of civilian deaths. Oh, well, they're not ready to issue that list, because once they issue the list, you'll find out the identities of these various soldiers of fortune are now soldiers of misfortune. So Putin made it very clear. He says, look, we're not going to launch attacks against civilian centers just to kill civilians. He says, we're not, you know, he says, I have no stomach for killing a mother walking her baby in a pram. We're going to use targeted strikes. We're going to hit military and intelligence targets. We're going to hit targets of Western military supporters. And we're going to go after critical infrastructure. And you know, he's very clear on that. So the West better wake up and listen. And each attack that the Ukrainians carry out against civilian targets in Russia elicits a bigger response. Just today, over the last 3 days, Russia had just unleashed a torrent of missiles and rockets and drones. Today's attack was probably twice as large as what they launched yesterday, which was twice as large as what they launched on the 31st of December. So Russia ain't playing.
Putin also said in one of his interviews that I was watching, he said that the West, it's impossible. They will not win. I don't know if you see when he made that statement.
I've heard that. Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, that's what I say. Pay attention to what Putin says.
Right.
The Russians, Putin's not, he's not the glue that holds Russia together. He's really he's emblematic of the Russians. He's actually probably much more measured and calm. He's not given to emotional outbursts or rants. People like Medvedev, he's an emotional guy, and when he's pissed, you absolutely know it, and he might even do something a little irrational in a moment of anger. But that said, Putin is committed to this defeat of Ukraine, and they're moving about it very methodically.
I just have one more question
Sure.
and I'm sorry about that. Mr. Messina, he's a subscriber. Mr. Messina wants to know: do you see Israel, as it stands, pulling out of its troops from northern Gaza as a sign of defeat?
Yeah, I do. Remember, Israel's stated objective was to destroy Hamas. Well, when you're having to withdraw troops, you'd withdraw them if you destroyed Hamas, but they haven't destroyed Hamas. And there are still rockets being fired from that territory into Tel Aviv. So, it's exposing Israel as the Israelis. I don't know if you've ever dealt with them. I have. Humility is not one of their strong suits. Let's put it that way. They are, the arrogance factor is remarkable. I posted a video last week of this one Israeli firearms instructor explaining what the Israelis do is when they carry a pistol. The pistol has a magazine, and so when you go to put that magazine in, that doesn't mean the gun's loaded. You have to take the slide, pull the slide back, let it go, and that moves forward, chambers around. Well, the Israelis train their soldiers to not carry a live round in the pistol. They say, no, wait until you draw the gun, and as you're drawing it, then rack the slide and then chamber the round there. Well, the reason they do that is because, A, they don't have, he admitted this, they don't have enough time to train their soldiers to operate safely. So therefore, this is like a special needs child where you have to make some adjustments and accommodations for them. Well, sorry, when you're carrying a firearm, you either better know how to operate it safely, which means you have a round chambered, that because in a moment of threat, you have to get that firearm out quickly and shoot it. You don't have time to rack the slide. If you are not competent to do that, you shouldn't even have a damn gun. Shouldn't be carrying one. That's an example of what's going on with the Israeli military. They're training them to the lowest standard possible. And as such, they're up against some Hamas fighters, which are actually pretty good. And Hamas frankly is, it's a win for Hamas if Israel doesn't win.
So, Larry, do you have a book coming out soon?
No, it's just, I'm confining myself right now to writing and posting at Sonar 21.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your time and your knowledge, and everything, Sonar 21, everything, your YouTube channel, and everything will be in the description box.
All right, guys, listen, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate you.
All righty, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so that was former CIA Larry Johnson. Dave, you know I couldn't ask him the sort of questions we'd expect this channel to ask him. He is former CIA, but just like with the Marines, once a Marine is always a Marine. So I had to keep my questions, same with Real Truth Talk, uh, basically on point. Lynn posted in the chat this interesting video regarding the Islamist organizations like ISIS in Iraq, which is where Ahmed al-Shara, the current head of state of Syria, originated from. Let me pull that up. Hold on and hit the likes, everyone. You aren't going to hear groundbreaking interviews anywhere else with all sorts of guests. Uh, I even bring the normies in. Okay, so this is.
Watch this whole quick video. You won't regret it. My whole life, ISIS and Al-Qaeda were the boogeymen for all of our actions in the Middle East. These radical extreme terrorists that were horrible, evil, which I still believe they are. And all the quote-unquote conspiracy theories about them were that the United States and our allies were actually either behind them or funding them. It seemed crazy. Who would believe that? Why? We need to go avenge what they did to us. But reports have come out within the last few weeks and months that Western press doesn't seem to be reporting outside of a few Israeli publications, which is this headline: "What's wrong with that? How Israel trained and armed an ISIS-linked Gazan militia." In 2017, Newsweek ran this headline: "ISIS fighters regret attacking Israel and have apologized," former defense minister says. When it comes to Al-Qaeda, even ABC News and everybody's reporting it, from Al-Qaeda to Syria's presidency, the rise of Ahmad al-Sharaa, and our Western allies seem to be thrilled with the fact that the neocon/establishment regime change in Syria happened. This is always what they wanted. They always wanted regime change, but they told you it was going to lead to democracy and a better country or whatever, building schools. In reality, it seems like they're totally fine with an Al-Qaeda guy taking over the country. So once again, for decades we were told ISIS and Al-Qaeda were the boogeymen that were fighting, and mainstream news has now confirmed what Tulsi Gabbard used to say on television and get yelled at for, which is the United States is funding Al-Qaeda groups.
They expressed a question. They said, why is it that the United States, its allies and other countries are providing support, are providing arms to terrorist groups like al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, Arar al-Sham, ISIS, who are on the ground there?
An Israeli publication is admitting that Israel is funding ISIS-linked groups. So let me know in the comment section. Were the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists right that these two horrible groups that the news was telling us is the reason that we're fighting wars in the Middle East for 20 years? Were we actually either working with the groups or literally behind the groups? Or do you have some sort of other explanation for why one of them currently runs Syria and the other is being funded by our greatest ally? Appreciate you. Have a good day. Thanks.
Well, the psyops don't only apply to the Arab contingent of this Middle Eastern theater. There is an active project to basically discourage Israelis from being super excited about enlisting, right? Check this out from France 24. Israeli army faces growing dissent. Quote, "I will never again serve under this government." Israeli media have reported a marked increase in the number of reservists refusing to show up for army duty, pointing to rapidly declining support for a war that critics, including within the military, say is no longer motivated by Israel's security interests and the release of hostages held in Gaza. And this is also played. This also plays out from the Palestinian side. This is a screenshot of Izzeddin Qassam Brigade, or a member of the Izzeddin Qassam, and Look at what the screenshot says. The reality was so different from my expectations. The IDF didn't even deserve the strenuous training I had to endure. The IDF soldiers started spamming and kissing my feet, begging us not to kill him or kidnap him. We were unable to do anything because of how loudly they were yelling. So they're trying to make out the IDF soldiers as sniveling. Anyone have link to the video? Okay, it's on Telegram. I don't have a Telegram account. Let me see if I can play it. No, I can't. Looks like a video game. And half these comments, if not more, are actually bots. So there you have it, guys. Do you have any questions? And by the way, the Gen Xers and older might remember this video game character, Leisure Suit Larry. Who remembers Leisure Suit Larry? I think our friend Larry Johnson is fulfilling this Leisure Suit Larry trope. Because check him out in all his interviews. He's always wearing Hawaiian shirts or like a Miami Vice type aesthetic. This is from Foreign Policy, the dangerous decline in Israeli strategy. For decades, the Zionist project has been getting worse at defending itself. So this is kind of a underhanded admission to waning Anglo-American power projection, because that is what Israel really is. It's a military fortress intended to protect the Suez Passage and the Eastern Mediterranean, the gateway to Africa, Asia from the Mediterranean. So our friend here, Netanyahu, will be the scapegoat. Israel is in serious trouble. Its citizens are deeply divided, and this situation is unlikely to improve. And this article was written before the actual Iranian-Israeli assaults. Check out the damage the Iranians conducted on Tel Aviv. This is the worst damage done on Israel since its quote-unquote creation. Even the Arab armies in the Six-Day War of 1973 did not manage to hit Tel Aviv like this, right? Yom Kippur War. Check this out. The shelters are for Jews only. Thai workers are not welcome, nor are Arab Israeli citizens. He's laughing. He's يطرد الغير الإسرائيليين من الملاجئ بأنهم ليسوا يهود. Kicking out non-Israelis from shelters, from the bunkers, because they're not Jewish. This guy is a huge Zionist shill. Why should the U.S. enter World War II? The Nazis pose us no threats. Okay, so he's trying to guilt Americans into enlisting to fight for Israel. He has absolutely no read the room, man. Iran should stop attacking Israel. They're doing unspeakable things in the shelters. Look at the Israelis still.
And tonight, in our bomb shelter, We're organizing a gay sex party. He found a bomb shelter with air conditioning. Very breathable, very comfortable. The Iron Dome will protect us, enjoying the power of raw, strong Israeli manpower. No weakness. And if you're afraid of strong men, you better watch out for weak men. Or even worse, evil lesbian jihadis. We've got your number, all of you terror supporters, you absolute monster. And tonight,
Okay, so you know what this is? This is, in my opinion, uh, the American left making reverse psychology type psyops, embarrassing what Israel is in order to diminish its legitimacy. You get what I mean? So they go there, they act super degenerate, uh, basically making Israel look even worse than it already looks. And it's part of the dismantlement project that is being run by the United States. And believe it or not, when you see uh, obnoxious people on social media like Rabbi Shmuley and what's the name of that actor who's always making TikTok videos? They're also part of this. They're part of this op where they're purposely, accentuating their obnoxiousness. Marlene and my relative thinks it's all true. Oy vey. So I think I covered everything. I hope you guys benefited from today's interview with Larry Johnson. I'm going to post his website, the website that he mentioned in the interview, in the description box. I've already posted Real True Talks channel. Real True Talks in California. He's an ex-Marine. So we had an ex-Marine and an ex-CIA today. And if you have any questions, I think I'll have 5 minutes for questions. And thank you, Marcel, for gifting membership as well as the super chats. Guys, if you're interested in basically widening your perspective and having access to, I think personally, one of the best vaults of just infotainment on YouTube, I say join our membership. Tyrion Purple, $3.99 Canadian. I don't know what's that in US, but I'm sure it's much, much less than a Starbucks coffee, right? And if you join the Tyrion Purple membership, you will get access to yours truly. I'll give you an example. Jonathan O'Toole, he is steel-toed in the chat. He's a Tyrion Purple member. Go check out my interview with Jonathan O'Toole. He is a bit of a public figure himself. He has an IMDb page and a lot of haters based on his firm stance and beliefs. And I personally believe if you don't have haters in this realm, in this dunya, you haven't made it. So the fact that you have haters to me is evidence that you've made it or that you've got something to say. Reddington, infotainment. Aren't you a member, Reddington? So any questions, guys? If no questions, I think we're good for today. Oh, you got a gifted membership. Well, I am almost certain it was Marcel or Jonathan. So I hope you choose to stay after your gifted period, your 1 month gifted membership ends. Reddington. Black flags. Will we see the end of the Zaya project in our Absolutely, absolutely. Now the question is, will they? Are they dismantling it to regroup? Is it something else? Is this WASP insurgency? You know, the WASP middle management demographic in the United States. Are they realizing that uh, Pax Americana is almost on the way out? And if they do not dismantle their quote unquote greatest ally, the greatest ally might be flipped by, the rising Eurasian tide and then uh, used on the Americans. All the secrets, all the patents that they handed out to their Zionist friends maybe could fall into the wrong hands. That's the sort of things they're worried about in the United States, right? Or within the tech oligarchy in the US. So, are they dismantling this project in order to regroup bigger and stronger? But for every action, there's a counter reaction, and we're seeing the effects. That's the gamble of our lifetime. Reddington is the thing that comes after the Zio project. Will it be something worse? Because if it is, it just seems I don't want to be a pessimist. Then it seems true that these people are accelerationists and they just want to bring upon the end of the world or something. They're following like a biblical script. Yeah, Marcel, the fear of what might come, it is the gamble of the 21st century. If people like Imran Hussein are right, well, what is to come is the end of Pax Americana and the rise of Pax Judaica. But we're looking at Israel at its weakest right now. So, how does the two compute? Well, yesterday we dove deep into Shia Islam and Iran's leadership. So, it's in the members section or live stream section, members only section. Go check it out. We basically cover how Iran's leadership aren't real Muslims. Marlene Brown. They're playing out the three world wars by Albert Pike. Ain't that something? How did some Confederate soldier living in the 19th century spell it out so precisely that we're witnessing the things he wrote out play out, and the way he did, except for the third one, Dave. These characters thrive on yes, they the elite are Neoplatonists. They follow Platonic principles, so they want the masses to be living the life of the allegory in Plato's cave, where they're displaying shadow figures on the cave's wall with the lights and everything, and we don't know what's going on. That's how they want to design the reality we live in. By the way, Chad, go check out Dave J. He's a lot of my sources for footage, videos, and commentary. because he's a researcher. He has the NDNGH theory. Nobody dies, nobody gets hurt. So while we were speaking with Larry Johnson, you know, he was being super skeptical with Larry Johnson's take. I don't believe Larry Johnson seen combat. I'm almost certain he was a desk analyst at the CIA. Greg, Jay Dyer said that Albert Pike's letter about the three world wars is a fake. I haven't looked. You know what? It's like the protocols thing. It's too so good that it must be a fake. But then again, even if it's a fake, the content within it, what unless it was written sometime in the 20th century, if it's a fake written sometime in like the 60s or something, uh, then we can totally discredit it. But if it was written before World War I actually popped off, even if it's not Albert Pike who actually wrote it, even if it was somebody else, the contents within. And you're right. I haven't read the letter thoroughly, but I do know it's a letter to Mazzini, who was an Italian Freemason, and he was responsible for the unification of all these Italian principalities and city states and Sicily and all that. So it's very interesting. And yeah, Reddington, I agree. It is at the bottom of the totem pole, and in some ways, they're useful idiots. When the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran, uh, the students, the revolutionaries, were breaking into like the Savak, which is like the Iranian CIA's archival office. They basically got access to all the Iranian members of Iranian Freemasonic lodges, and they published the names, and a lot got executed because Freemasonry was criminalized by the Islamic Republic, right? And then keep in mind, we already saw Zakawan expose Iranian media with all its one eye symbolism and even their parliament building. They are part and parcel of this system, right? So yeah, Freemasons, they're kind of like everyone is a scapegoat in the end to these people. And there's a Quranic verse that says the same thing, They're not united at all. But I think I've went long enough, guys. Thank you very much for participating.